I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. What if the biggest leap in your actuarial career had nothing to do with passing exams and everything to do with learning to lead the people that you used to sit beside? Joining us today is Cosimo Maiolo, a qualified actuary whose career has taken him from Sydney to London to Dublin and through just about every leadership challenge you can imagine along the way. He's one of our nominated Great Actuarial Leaders for 2026, and today he's here to share what he learned from the moments that tested him the most. We're going to cover a lot of ground, from what happens when your boss resigns 2 weeks into your first leadership role, to what moving overseas can teach you about leadership, to the performance conversation that could have been handled differently. So if you've ever wondered whether people skills matter as much as technical skills, and spoiler alert, they do, this one is for you. Cos, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julie, for having me.
Because I think, the actuarial profession is so small, but we hadn't crossed paths before this podcast opportunity came up. And it was Adrian Carlosi who nominated you, and I put out the call on LinkedIn to who are the greatest actuarial leaders of 2026. And so when we sat down and had our first chat, I was surprised that we hadn't ever crossed paths, because it does feel like the profession's small here in Australia especially, but we just have kind of had parallel careers.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was really great to have that initial chat as well, and get to know your path as well.
Yeah, it's interesting where our actuarial careers can take us. And so I'm really looking forward to unpacking a couple of your more interesting stories from your career in today's conversation. So really looking forward to having this chat with you, Cos. And so before we get into the topic of leadership, I'd like to ask you the question I ask all my guests, and it's this.
Uh-huh.
Cos, how do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
Yeah, I kind of think of all the ways that actuaries can and do make an impact. And I think for me, I feel it most in two ways. And I think the first one is effective translation. So I kind of use intentionally that word rather than communication, because I think for me, much of what we do as actuaries is we provide advice to others in order for them to make the best decision possible. And I think in order for people to trust that advice that you're giving them, the ability to translate the technical analysis you've done into concepts that are very easily understood is so crucial. And importantly, you've got to be able to explain it in a way that can be challenged and questioned. I found that people have a lot more buy-in if they've understood your work and can question it. Sometimes if you present something, you get no questions. It sometimes means people haven't understood what it is you're trying to show them. So I think that's probably the first one. And then really the second one, I think for me, is around just working to develop the next generation of actuaries, and in really trying to invest time and effort in people. And it doesn't have to be, material investments, hours of time. Sometimes it's the small things, it might be taking that extra 5 or 10 minutes to explain to an analyst the background of a task, why you're asking them to do the piece of work, rather than just asking them to get you a number. It could be just giving them a little bit of freedom and safe space to experiment on a task, to make mistakes, and then ultimately to learn. And I think I was very privileged to work for a series of leaders who did that, who invested time and effort in me. And I feel a big sense of responsibility to sort of pay that forward to future actuaries.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's so fortunate when we can have that great leadership modelled for us, and then to be able to pay it forward, as you said. And I really liked the way that you described communication as translation. I've never heard that before, but I really like that framing on it, because communication's such a broad topic and can be interpreted in so many different ways, but translation is probably a better way to describe what we do as actuaries, isn't it? We're translating our complex, work and results into something that's meaningful for another stakeholder or someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, and even sometimes, you're often translating between different business units who often also speak different languages. So
Yeah.
playing that translation role across not only what you do, but also what others do, shows that you can add that sort of value. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I love the fact that your leadership approach is not just in sort of big investments, it's that day to day, interactions and daily activities and coaching to be that great leader. So let's explore how you kind of made that first transition into leadership, because this is quite often a difficult or challenging time for many actuaries in particular. We spend so much time on our technical skills and then we make that transition into our first management or leadership role. It can be quite tricky. What was that experience like for you, Cos?
Yeah. So first stepping into a leadership role for me felt very much like a baptism of fire is kind of my best way to describe it.
Okay.
I was kind of moving from like a sort of a portfolio actuary kind of individual contributor role to a pricing manager role of a team of three. And a part of the dynamic of moving into that first leadership role was becoming the manager of a team of people who were your peers as well.
Yes.
So it's kind of that
Yep.
extra interesting dynamic. I think you alluded to it in the intro that I was thrown a little bit into the deep end, and I was hesitant at first to
Uh-huh.
actually take the role. I was hesitant to step up into that role,
Yeah.
and I sort of eventually thought, well, I'm going to just give this a go. And I was kind of planning.
Hesitant because they were your peers and you weren't sure about managing your peers, or hesitant just because it was a new role?
It was a bit of both. Yeah,
Okay.
it's certainly like hesitant to, go from, people that you'd socialize with, your peers, you might go and have a beer with, and it's very kind of challenging to then have to think, well, I'm going to have to kind of now become someone's manager, and then also, not having had the experience, just wondering, do I have it? Do I have what it takes? Can I be effective?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bit of both really. Um, and so I sort of accepted the role, and then I was sort of thinking about how I could best build up, and I'd sort of plan to obviously do the practice and find my feet over time. And I had a manager who was very supportive, and he said, look, I'll be around. I'll be there to coach you. You won't be on your own. So I thought, oh, this will be okay. This will be fine. But obviously, like as in any business, circumstances can change. And just a couple of weeks after I'd sort of started the role, my boss, moved to another organization because he had a great opportunity come up, and it left me feeling a little bit overwhelmed and responsible for quite a significant team. And really, like at that point, I just kind of thought, well, I'm just going to have to embrace this challenge.
Yep.
um, it was also kind of contextually a very difficult time in the group insurance market, not dissimilar to what it is like today from what I have heard, though I'm not as close to life insurance anymore, but very adverse TPD claims experience, large premium rate increases were being applied across the market. And obviously like that was kind of challenging because it was stretching and meaning our internal stakeholder relationships were also quite challenging. Imagine telling one of your relationship managers that the premium for one of their clients needed to go up 100%.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and that was kind of like not the only time we had to have those types of discussions. So I guess like for me, I kind of learned very quickly that um, success as a leader in that space was linked to the success of the team. The team getting to know how they work. I'd sort of already knew them, but getting to know the way they work, what motivated them, um, coaching them through some of the challenges that we were facing, and trying to support and develop them. That's what kind of made the difference for me in that. Um, Given how challenging it was, that period of time, having someone like a mentor sort of separate and not in the business was also very helpful to kind of bounce ideas around and get support as needed. So those were the kind of the things that I kind of picked up from that.
Yeah, okay. It certainly sounds like it was a baptism of fire, Cos, because you not only did you have the challenge of managing your peers, you're managing for the first time, your own manager, went somewhere else, and then you've got the commercial challenges across the business as well, having to communicate or translate some
Yeah,
of that across different with different stakeholders. So it would have been a vertical learning curve for you. You mentioned having a mentor outside the business. How did you go about seeking that?
I was very lucky that I'd kind of worked with a couple of people who had become mentors, but unofficially. So
Hmm.
people that you'd sort of built up trust with over time, and then you sort of, you find, and some of these people today I still lean on for
Yeah.
advice and guidance and counsel. So I think, there is obviously always that ability to kind of formalize a mentor relationship, and some
Mm.
people, get a lot out of that.
Yeah.
I've kind of had a little bit more. I found sometimes developing a friendship with someone who you've worked with for a period of time, and then maintaining that over a period can be quite helpful as well. They
Yeah.
know you, they've seen you develop from an
Mm.
analyst, and they've seen your career, so they can often give you, you know, they sort of know you very well. So
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I have found helpful for me anyway.
Yeah, 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 that's good. They can give you that kind of tailored advice, not just sort of generic ideas or
That's right.
yeah, they sort of know what might work for you. Yeah. It's
Exactly.
so helpful and so powerful to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So really interesting transition for you and clearly you've gone from strength to strength, but learnt a lot from that first leadership experience. So I guess the lesson there for people finding it difficult is that, there's still just a lot to learn and getting support for that can be really powerful to help you be successful in that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like also just embracing opportunities when they come up,
Mm.
you sort of, early in your career, you're sort of young and you think, there might be lots of opportunities, but often like opportunities don't come up all that often. So embracing them when they do, saying yes.
Say yes.
You can't, well, my kind of view is it's very hard to prepare
Mm.
um, to be a leader.
Mm.
But I think if you find enjoyment in that sort of developing people, seeing them grow, it's very self-satisfying anyway.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, I think that's probably the other lesson I took from that opportunity. I was kind of really hesitant, but it turned out to be a great move. And so yeah, that was
Yeah.
the other thing I took from it as well.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of moves, like many actuaries, except for me, so I'm always fascinated by these stories. You've moved and worked overseas for a period of time, Cos. What did that experience teach you about leadership?
We'll be right back.
Julia Lessing's new book, Senior Leadership, An Essential Guide for Actuaries, covers advanced managerial strategies designed for more experienced leaders. It builds on the foundation of Julia's first book, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders. Together, these two books offer actuaries a complete leadership development pathway. The strength of this new guide lies in its practical strategies that actuarial leaders can implement to improve teamwork and organizational effectiveness. We're thrilled to collaborate with Julia again. She's an inspiration to actuaries everywhere.
Yeah, and it was a great experience, and I think like it was kind of after I'd spent that a few years sort of managing a team, I sort of made that call to move overseas, and it was really it wasn't for me a career move. It was very much a move I wanted to do personally. I really
Okay.
wanted to live in I wanted to live in London, and I thought I'd better find a way to support myself whilst doing so.
Yep.
So I sort of left the role in Sydney, moved over to London.
Yep.
I didn't have a job secured, so I just sort of took that leap and thought I'll give it a go.
Mm.
It did take a while to find a role, about 4 months of searching,
Wow.
and I did eventually, find a role working for Swiss Re in London,
Mhm.
which was a cool experience. They're sort of based out of the Gherkin, which is kind of a famous London landmark. So it was a cool place to land.
Okay.
And I think, look, even it's one of those things when you move overseas, I don't think people fully prepare you for it. But even though I'd had experience managing a team for a few years, also qualified actuary. You move into a new country. I didn't have knowledge of the UK life insurance market, and
Mm.
so when you're looking for roles, you have to kind of realize that you may have to take a step back to get your foot in the door. Um, and so yeah, I spent a few years working in London, and after a few years, I moved into a role supporting a health insurance client in Ireland, and that was kind of really a bit of a it was kind of another formative step. Another situation where, I was sort of asked, oh, would you like to move over to Dublin and become the head of pricing and support this client? And I thought, well, all my friends and all these people I know quite well, my now wife was in London, and I was
Yeah.
like, well, I guess we'll see how this goes. So I took the leap and thought, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was
You said yes.
I said yes, tried to say yes again.
Yep.
And I was working closely with a client who had an internal product and pricing team. So they were the distributor
Hmm.
and we were the underwriter. So
Okay.
representing the underwriter, and the team from the distributor, the Irish-based team of highly experienced people, significantly more experienced than me in health insurance,
Hmm.
in the Irish market, and in the business itself.
Wow.
Um,
Must have
so
felt quite out of your depth.
Oh, incredibly! Like yes, and I did, and I think it's really delicate because you're in a role like that when you're sort of seen as the underwriting expert internally,
Mm,
but when you're working with the distributor, you're not quite the expert at the start. You've got to
no.
get to know the business, and really your success, like the success in that role, depends on working closely with and building credibility with that team.
Mm.
Um,
So how did
the
how
ability.
did you do that? How did you build credibility?
Yeah, it was really tough. Like at first, it was just I spent a lot of time listening, just
Uh-huh.
trying to understand how they worked, trying to understand some of the challenges, and we looked for kind of opportunities where we could where they were facing a problem, and we just looked for an opportunity to build something that could help them solve that problem.
Okay.
And it
Yep.
was kind of something that was very innocuous to start off with. It was like they had, something like 110 products, because health insurance is all about kind of managing your risk through product design,
Mm,
because
mm.
pricing is a little bit more limited.
Yep.
So they had about 110 products, and then there were some issues around a product. When you wanted to launch a new product, you had to be very careful to make sure that it sat correctly within a hierarchy.
Uh-huh.
And health insurance as well, you're offering so many different benefits: dental, optical, physio, chiro, you could, and all the different hospital benefits. So it was often quite challenging to even just manage, well, where should this product sit?
Mm,
Um, are we going to make sure we don't make a mess and have this product be more expensive and less generous than another product? So
mm, mm.
I built this tool which was just able to kind of quickly rank the products, and then you could sort of tell you for every benefit where it was more or less generous. And we just
Okay.
sort of handed it over to the client and said, look, we've built this for you to help with some of the product design pieces. And that was kind of the initial um, task that we did, just to sort of show that we were listening and
Yeah.
show that we would try and add value where possible. And
So,
that
so
was kind of the
powerful.
start. So yeah, it was
Mm.
that was kind of what I did. And really, like, yeah, you have to, like, at that point, you have to spend time learning about the business, building relationships, like I say, looking for what opportunities there were to add value. And then over time, you become more influential because you've been able to solve problems that people are facing.
Yep.
Um, and really, like a leadership experience, which I got so much out of, because it was really humbling to sort of have to sort of take a step back
Mm.
and learn a lot from scratch. But ultimately, again, another, like, a very fulfilling experience that I was able to have. And really, I think the biggest lesson, to summarize, really what I got out of that, is just how important humility is as a skill for a leader. You don't have to have, and nor do you usually ever have, all the answers.
So
Um,
true.
yeah, like, and like, as you sort of progress in your career, success as a leader is sort of less about what you achieve and more what you can achieve through others.
Mm.
It could be your direct reports, but for actuaries, very much, again, to my earlier point, it's around stakeholders in the business who you've provided insights and advice who can then make, the best decision.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. So another great learning opportunity for you, but also an experience in humility
absolutely.
and in being willing to be flexible and thinking about your career as more of a I always describe it as a blob rather than a ladder because
Absolutely.
it sort of takes different shapes sometimes, and sometimes there are sort of sideways steps or different pathways to kind of carve out your career, and it sounds like you did that quite well. You could have just stuck to your guns and gone, nope, I'm going in at this level and this is where I am, and you might have been out of work for longer than 4 months in London.
That's right. Exactly. And it's not a cheap place to be out of work for 4 months, I can tell you.
I can imagine. I imagine 4 months would have been already quite stretched.
It was, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and then, not being the expert, being in a new country, a new market, a new practice area, and being able to use those skills of listening and trying to understand and trying to, show some care and solving some problems helped you to build that credibility. And some great experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to last meaty question for you today, Cos, is around mistakes, because this comes up with in leadership discussions and certainly my leadership development training all the time. All great leaders have made mistakes because we're human and mistakes happen, and we learn from them. Could you share some of the lessons that you've learned from when things haven't gone according to plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I must be a good leader because I've made plenty of mistakes. But look, I'll share kind of maybe a story, and my kind of story is around performance management. And it's an area where I think it's one which it's probably for me one of the hardest aspects of leadership. So it was kind of, I was moving into a new role, managing a small team, a mixture of actuaries and non-actuaries, so a team of, say, 4 people. And you're coming into a team early on, you're trying to get to know your team members, you're trying to build rapport, and you're trying to build trust. And I kind of noticed early on in the time that there were some issues with one of the team members around just attention to detail, lack of sort of checking and verifying data. And it sort of ended up in a few issues, like tasks needing to be redone, reports that we'd issued to the business needing to be reissued. So trust from the internal customers that we had was kind of being impacted. You're sort of trying to give, and then so I thought I'll give some feedback to this person. So, you give feedback and say, the next time, let's look to improve this, or, it was good we got that done, but here were a few things where we could have improved.
Yeah. So you're trying to make it constructive.
You're trying to make it constructive,
Yeah.
exactly. And I gave what I thought was kind of quite concrete feedback around some of those issues, probably 4 or 5 times throughout the year.
Wow.
And it kind of came, and it sort of came time to do the sort of usual annual performance review discussion. And I'd ask this person to sort of reflect on their performance during the year and what they performed well. And they kind of said, oh yeah, I've had a really great year, and they'd asked, oh, like, is there a pathway to promotion in the
Yeah,
next
wow.
place? And so I sort of took from that, the feedback that I was giving to this particular person was it wasn't kind of direct enough. And sometimes you feel as a leader that you need to give, or some people feel, I need to give kind of feedback that's sort of a bit softer. But I've found in the past, regular, honest, direct feedback is so critical. And I think and I think it's becoming a bit less fashionable, but, I remember when I first started as a leader, there was always the compliment sandwich. You give someone something good, then you send a little bit of feedback, and then you finish on a positive. But I kind of find that that's just not effective at all, because I think now I take the view when I'm having a performance discussion, it's dedicated to whatever the issues are, exploring them. I give the person the chance to give their reflection first. I reflect on I give my reflections, and I kind of often will use fairly unequivocal language. Language to the effect of, your performance on this task fell short of expectation. And I think it's really important, because I think when people are given feedback, let's say critical feedback, sometimes they soften it in their head what the feedback was. And so really you've got to make sure, I've kind of been really intentional about making sure that the message doesn't get lost. I think And that's been like that's been a big lesson for me, honestly. But I think the other aspect of performance discussions and managing the performance of a team, you've got a team of people. If you've got one person who you can observe as the leader is not performing, you can bet that all of your other direct reports and people in your team can also observe that.
Mm.
And if they don't see that performance or those performance issues being addressed, it's almost worse because it impacts the whole team.
Mm.
And I always kind of look at the trade-off of, well, how's it going to affect the rest of the team versus how awkward is this discussion that
Yeah.
I'm going to have with this person
Yeah.
around addressing that?
Yeah.
And I don't, and the other kind of lesson I've learned is no one is comfortable having these discussions. They're not comfortable discussions. We're humans.
Mm.
We don't enjoy this.
No.
So yeah, so I kind of think sometimes when it comes to performance feedback, just it feels like something that you can kick down the road because
Mm.
it's not
Mm.
comfortable, but
Mm.
it often has bigger impacts that just need to be addressed earlier. So that for me
Mm.
really is just that was a
Yeah.
lesson, and I continue to learn that lesson almost all the time, honestly.
There's so much in that story, Cos, so much in there about performance management, because as you said, it's not just about the person that you need to give the feedback to, it's actually about the whole team.
Yeah,
And if you don't address that performance issue, it can contribute to lower morale across the team. People are feeling like they're not valued, or they're having to work harder to pick up the slack. They're wondering why you as the leader is not doing anything about it.
exactly.
And so, yeah, it's an interesting dimension to think about, because in my experience as a coach, I've seen a lot of actuaries, and I know I fell into this trap myself early on too, a bit avoidant when it comes to that. It's
Absolutely.
not wanting to have that conversation, hoping it'll sort itself out, questioning whether or not
Exactly.
you're in the right place to pull up that kind of perhaps to have that conversation, or whether it's just their different style or whatever. But most of the time, having that conversation will pay off well if it
It does.
lands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, and maybe the other kind of thing which is useful is like, practice, right? So I think we always kind of have thought of, feedback as we wait till the performance review, or we kind of, we might do it once or twice during the year. But I think looking for opportunities to provide that feedback regularly can help, because you get the practice of giving the feedback to someone. They
Yeah.
get the practice of knowing that they'll receive it, they
Yeah.
can adapt, and the feedback positive, it can be positive or it can be
Yeah.
constructive, but just having that regular feedback is really important for your people. Even thinking about yourself, like, even for you when you're working, sometimes you think, well, it'd be good to know if I'm doing well or I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
you've got to think about how your people would feel about that as well.
Exactly, exactly. And I like that framing that, we need to give positive feedback as well as constructive feedback. And I think when you get into the habit of just regularly giving positive feedback, it then makes it easier to then give some constructive feedback. You don't feel like you're just sort of drilling
Exactly.
down on the negative, but you're just giving feedback along the way. It's just part of the team culture, and people are used to
Yeah,
giving and receiving feedback. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very powerful. So much in there, and so much more I'd like to unpack and ask you about, but I won't today. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience of the baptism of fire, to use your expression, stepping into your first leadership role. What you learned about humility and listening, and about leadership more broadly when you moved overseas to work in different countries, and then the importance of giving direct and regular feedback, and the ripple effect that can have, not just for that person but for your whole team. So some really, really good lessons in there today, Cos. So I'd like to finish our conversation today with one final question, and it's this.
Yep.
Cos, what's your top tip that you'd have for actuaries stepping into leadership roles?
Yeah. I think like it's already probably come through in some of the stories I've shared, but I think for me, it really is about taking opportunities as and when they arise, even if they don't feel comfortable. In fact, I'd say being uncomfortable is a sign that you're going to have to stretch and develop yourself. So probably those are the best opportunities to be throwing yourself into. And really, like the other thing I think about as well is when it comes to opportunities, you don't have to be in a formal leadership position to start to develop your leadership your leadership skills. It could just be, some simple examples like volunteering to take the lead on an internal project, asking to informally supervise or work with an analyst on a task, putting your hand up to present some analysis to key non-actuarial stakeholders and test and learn how they most effectively receive information. Like that for me would be the top tip, I would say.
Yeah. Great advice. Cos, thank you so much for your time today. So many great stories, lessons and reflections that will be really helpful for so many of our listeners around the world looking to either step into or get better at being in their leadership roles as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Cos.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Julie. Really enjoyed it.
So there you have it. Real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.
It's exciting to see Julia releasing 2 books in 2025. Her latest title, Senior Leadership, An Essential Guide for Actuaries, is designed for seasoned leaders who are further along in their careers. It builds on the foundation of her first book, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, The Modern Manager's Toolkit, which supports new and emerging managers. Together, these 2 books now offer actuaries a complete leadership development pathway. As with Julia's first book, the strength of this new guide lies in its practical strategies, tools actuaries can apply to their work right away. It helps leaders feel more confident, grounded, and better prepared for the challenges they face. What sets Julia's approach and this book apart is how they weave together stories and experiences from a wide range of actuarial professionals. Senior Leadership, an essential guide for actuaries, equips leaders with tools to foster workplaces where teams can perform at their highest potential. We're thrilled to collaborate with Julia again. She's not only a joy to work with, but also an inspiration to actuaries everywhere.